as lambs were slaughtered to mark the doorposts as a sign of that covenant, so the angel of death would pass over them. We hear today how Moses sacrificed young bulls as a sign of that covenant. He used that blood to show his unwavering commitment to God and the covenant he had with the people. on Calvary. A sacrifice represented here today in our presence. Reflect on how you're a holy people. You're a nation set apart from all others. Because God has made you his own. He gave his son to save you individually and collectively. That is why we gather. That is why the Mass should be the reason you miss everything else on Sunday. It's what draws us to the very presence of God. We are a people called to be a blessing to others. Every time we celebrate these wonderful